Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zone Defense. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast, on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Zone Defense Podcast. And be sure to ring that bell to get post notifications. Be sure to also hit that like button and drop a comment down below and let us know your thoughts on today's topic. Today, Roman, Chris, and I are diving into our weekly pick'em for Week 13 of the NFL season. How's it going, guys?
I'm good, Drew. Week 13 is upon us, although technically Week 12 isn't done yet because obviously we're recording on Wednesday and we still have to wait for the Steelers-Ravens game, which is oddly enough on a Wednesday afternoon. So that's interesting to look forward to. We have some news that we might share in the news and notes section. However, I do want Chris to publicly apologize before we start about that Derek Carr fantasy pick he made last week.
Yeah, I choose not to comment about that. Derek Carr hurt my soul, hurt my own fantasy teams in multiple leagues, forcing me to lose by less than 10 points. But yeah, Derek Carr, if you're listening to this, you need to play better than that, man. That was horrible. I've defended you all year. Roman's been bashing you all year, both on the podcast and off the podcast. But you played like the 20th ranked quarterback in the NFL this week. So you need to be better, man. No, I'm not even going to say about the pick because it's just so embarrassing. I was going to compliment myself about the David Montgomery pick, but this is just, it's so embarrassing. I knew this was going to get brought up. I was dreading it. I'm not happy, man. I'm really not. Drew, if you want to add something, feel free.
You might, if you're watching this, he might block you on Twitter or Instagram because I know a lot of times he's been notorious for if somebody talks crap about him or doubts him, he just blocks them from Twitter. Like any negative energy, he just blocks it. So he might block you now. Who knows?
I actually heard a rumor that he tried to block me, but he dropped the phone, and then the Falcons, an Atlanta player, picked it up and scored. So that was the rumors going around the mill. But yeah, we can go ahead and get into the news and notes that aren't Derek Carr related. Breaking news: he sucked last week. Injuries though, so we got Daniel Jones with the hamstring, assuming that he misses some time. DJ Moore, we're not going to hear much about this because they're on the bye week, but he had that what looked like a catastrophic leg injury. It was non-contact back in the but I guess the news coming out of Carolina seems like it's a little bit better than that. Same with Josh Jacobs. That looked bad for him, but he, with the ankle as well, looked like maybe a high ankle sprain, but I think he's going to be okay. Maybe he misses a week. Maybe not. We'll see. It remains to be seen. Maybe they'll give him a week off, but we'll see. Philip Lindsay, the knee injury, I mean, he's just a laundry list. It's becoming a laundry list of, and makes a little more sense why they signed trash running back Melvin Gordon the contract, because Philip Lindsay hasn't really been able to stay on the field, which I mean that entire situation. I mean, last week was rough watching them. We don't need to get into that anymore, but it was rough. Lane Johnson, kind of same thing with Philip Lindsay. He's been really just hampered by injuries this year, and it's basically just a culmination of the entire Philadelphia Eagles season. Lane Johnson may be the better quarterback of him and Carson Wentz. Guy cannot throw a football anymore, apparently, which it just doesn't make any sense. And then Zach Martin, Cam Irving, both going to miss multiple weeks, it looks like, at least at this point. So, yeah, Andy Dalton, have fun, man. It's going to be a good time. And, at least you got Zeke's washed self back there, I guess. I don't know. It's just a lot of these situations, man, it's tough. Like you look at the Eagles and the Cowboys have really been hampered by injuries, but it's been poor play all around by star players like Carson Wentz, Ezekiel Elliott. So, can't blame it all on injuries when those players are playing that bad. But some other news, James Conner. Well, I'll start with James Conner and Mark Andrews. They'll be out tonight on the COVID list. Jonathan Taylor, though, he looks like he's going to be back for Week 13 after he didn't actually have COVID. He was just a close contact. But he's going to be back. He's all right. Probably talk about him a little bit later. But also tonight, Dobbins and Ingram will not play, but you'll have it is Dobbins and Ingram, but you will not know that, I guess, until after the video. So it's not really that relevant. But some COVID news, I guess we will kind of get into. I started touching up on it with the Dobbins and Ingram thing. They're starting to, I guess, they're cleared their time with the quarantine, but they're still going to be ineligible to play today. They did not make the trip. I guess we'll see how Gus Bus does in the role. He's just a dynamic runner, absolute force to be reckoned with. But the Broncos COVID news, There really isn't a lot to get into. I mean, they had their entire quarterback room. They had to play a receiver. I don't really want to throw them under the bus anymore because it was just, I mean, it was a terrible situation for them. They would have probably been better with me at the quarterback position. So it's very unfortunate, but those guys should be back. Drew Lock, hopefully back this week. The Saints, it feels like the 80th time this year, punished for a celebration without mask. Sean Payton seems like he doesn't really care about it either. He's been fined multiple times as well. So, I mean, we'll see what I don't know if you know what the actual punishment is, but I know that they got punished, I guess. But the Niners also, they cannot play in their stadium due to restrictions in Santa Clara. They're going to have to play in Glendale, Arizona, which is going to be weird because they're going to have 2 home games there. The Cardinals play on Sunday and then follow up by Buffalo and San Fran on Monday night. So that's going to be weird. And they're going to have to play multiple games there. It's very interesting. But well, not really news. We kind of already touched up on it. What happened to the Raiders? I really don't know, man. It was just Derek Carr sucked. The defense sucked. Apparently, Matt Ryan. I mean, he didn't really look that great to me, honestly. I don't really know how they scored like 40 points. They really didn't do that much offensively, but they. Oh yeah, Young Wei Koo is how they did that. He had like 87 field goals. But I really don't know. I think it's just one of those games you have to chalk up as just water under the bridge. I mean, this is an embarrassment. Obviously, it was a debacle, but I think it doesn't really change anything. They're still a playoff contender. They can have a get-right game against the New York Jets this week and get back in the playoff race. But are the Cardinals and Colts frauds? These are teams I've backed throughout the season. They didn't look great this week for sure. I mean, New England pretty much body bagged Kyler Murray into the game. Maybe the shoulders bother him a little bit more than we thought it would. But I think both these teams are still playoff competitors. I think Indianapolis. I mean, they absolutely embarrassed the Titans a couple weeks ago as well. I mean, you look at both. They both embarrassed each other. I think it kind of puts both teams in the same tier. Well, I'll start with you, man. What is your opinion on these 3 teams?
Yeah, for the Raiders, first of all, it was just a really weird game, and I talked about it a little bit on the Ravens update video that came out at the end of last week. I said that with Todd Gurley being out, I thought it'd be an even more convincing win for the Raiders. That clearly did not happen. Very wrong about that. The Cardinals, it's interesting because they were literally first in the division just a week ago, and now they're sitting at 3rd. It's getting tough for them. They have some hard games coming up this week against the Rams. They have another game against the Rams in a couple weeks. And then the Colts, lastly, got, like you said, body bagged by Derrick Henry, who's on an MVP tear. We seem to talk about him every week in that MVP conversation. Definitely concerning, considering that not many weeks left, and the Titans are currently first in the division, so they have some work to do to catch up. But are they frauds? I mean, maybe. We'll have to see.
I think you guys probably know where I'm going with this. I think the Cardinals are more fraudulent than the Colts. I think the Colts just had a bad game, and they're going to get right here. I mean, we saw them just a couple weeks ago with the Titans. They smacked them, and then they took care of business against Green Bay as well. They were due for a letdown game, which is why I ultimately picked Tennessee last week and was right about that. But I think they're still going to be a playoff team. They're going to be okay. The Cardinals I'm a little more concerned about just because New England, I know everyone is like, oh, New England, they're a dark horse AFC playoff contenders still, but New England's not a good football team. Cam Newton was awful, quite frankly, on Sunday. And Arizona, of course, they missed the field goal. If they make that field goal, they probably win the game, but they missed it. And, obviously they ended up losing the game as a result. And I don't like what I'm seeing from them. It seems like they're definitely trending in the wrong direction. As you mentioned, when they have a tough schedule, and Minnesota seems to be peaking at the right time here. I kind of thought last week that all the playoff spots were kind of set, but Minnesota's peaking at the right time. And I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota sneaks into the playoffs and knocks the Cardinals out, which it's pretty shocking because, as you said, just a few weeks ago, Arizona was probably the best team in the league. But even if you look at that Buffalo game, if they make that Hail Mary, they would have lost. They deserve to lose that game as well. So it's been a rough few weeks here for Arizona, and I'm rooting for Arizona, and I'm rooting for Minnesota to sneak into the playoffs because, quite frankly, I'm not a big Arizona fan. Sorry, Chris, but I hope Minnesota sneaks in.
I mean, it's your opinion, man. It's a dumb opinion, but we'll go ahead and move on. I noticed the lights in here were a little bit brighter. The birds were chirping a little louder because the Detroit Lions, fired Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, the most trash duo of coach and GM in NFL history. I am thrilled, beyond thrilled. Daryl Bevel, offensive coordinator, will be the interim head coach. I hope he doesn't succeed because I don't want him to come back. As we were talking about it before the podcast, I do not want him to be our future head coach. I do like the guy, but I mean, we got a clean house, man. It's just how it goes. Drew, Roman, we'll start with Drew on this one because we started with Roman last time. What's your opinion on this? I mean, I think I know it, but let's hear it anyway.
It might not be. I didn't want to give my opinion too much pre-show because I wanted to say it for the podcast. But I'm honestly kind of concerned. I'm happy Patricia's gone, but I mean, this is just a carousel, right? I mean, I feel like I was here a couple years ago. We fired Jim Schwartz. Oh, Jim Caldwell's the savior. Then Jim Caldwell. We fired Jim Caldwell. Oh, Matt Patricia's the savior. Then we fire Matt Patricia, and who knows who the next savior is going to be? But it feels like we're just going around in circles. I don't want to just blame the ownership, but it seems like an ownership issue, and I'm kind of at that point now where I'll believe it when I see it. I'm happy that Patricia's gone. I'm happy that Quinn's gone. I feel like they're both not great at their job, and I'm hopeful that they're going to bring in somebody new that's better. I mean, figure low bar, cheaper, but to bring someone in better than that's both of them. But at the same time, we've been here before with the Lions, and I'm kind of at that point now where even when I see it, I'm kind of going around in circles. I'm kind of past the point of getting super excited because we fired a coach or a GM. I mean, we just have to. One of these days, we got to make the right decision, right? And hopefully, it's whether it's Robert Saleh or it's Eric Bieniemy. Hopefully, we finally make the right choice. But Roman, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm actually less concerned. I'm more, I would say, interested and a little bit relieved as well, because obviously we've seen it. We've gotten embarrassed on national TV twice this year. It needed to happen. I'm glad we fired him. I think the reason maybe Patricia stuck around longer than he should have was because of Martha Ford. And we kind of saw this at the beginning of the offseason, really. Sheila Ford Hamp stepped up to that ownership role over Martha, who stepped down. And she wasn't going to take any crap. And I think she made the right decision firing him now. She said all the right things in her press conference. I'm not going to praise her for doing a move that needed to be done anyways, but at least we know that she's probably more committed to the team than any Ford has ever been throughout the Lions history. We kept Rod Wood, who kind of came in to the Lions organization the same time as Bob Quinn, which I thought was interesting. But to keep Rod Wood around, Sheila Ford Hamp has an idea. I think she's more into this organization than her predecessors were. She's more committed to the rebuild, the restructuring of the team. And I think it's going to be interesting to see who we hire because there's a lot of good candidates. So I think it's going to be hard to mess it up. But we talked about it before the podcast. Obviously, there's Eric Bieniemy, Robert Saleh, Joe Brady. I think those are my top three. Probably leaning towards Robert Saleh, who has been getting a lot of attention as of recently because his players want him to get a head coaching job. His defense performed really good last week against a good Rams team. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done in terms of our offense and defense. I think with the right coaching, we aren't necessarily too far away, but we'll also maybe experience a rebuild with maybe all our players and trying to get picks and whatnot, because who knows if Stafford's going to stick around. And I think that's up to the next GM and head coach.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are talking about for sure. Like Drew said, I'm concerned because we could just hire another bummy coach, but I'm expecting – like you said, there's some good candidates. I'm expecting we find one of them. But we'll go ahead and jump to the next. We'll just go ahead and throw these out there really quick. I mean, the Jags fired their GM. I mean, like you said, I it's good for them, I guess. I mean, they made a lot of questionable moves over the last couple of years, but it's really like uncertain what they're going to do next, I guess. And then Will Fuller also using a banned substance as well. He's going to miss the rest of the year. It's going to hurt. It's going to impact his free agency a lot too. He's going to miss maybe not a lot because he's going to miss the first game of next year, most likely, unless they had to take it off. But it's definitely concerning for sure for the Texans. I mean, maybe they re-sign him, maybe they don't. I was always kind of on the side where he was going to be a free agent for sure, but I wasn't 100% sure, and we're kind of seeing that now. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. It's going to take some money to get him back, though. But Drew, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and jump into the pick'em.
Yeah. So the first game, we had two teams that we talked about at length a little bit here at the top, the Lions and the Bears, two teams definitely trending in the wrong direction, both in desperate need of a get-right game. And Roman, you always start us off here with the Lions, so how about you start us off with this first game?
Yeah, clearly we've seen the Bears spiral out of control from their great start of the season, but they're obviously frauds. We knew that. They had to start Trubisky last week, who hasn't played in quite a while, and he didn't do good. Kind of did the same as we kind of expected him to, putting Matt Nagy's job more on the line, I believe, than we expected him to. The Lions, obviously, it'll be first game for interim head coach Darrell Bevell. He said all the right things in his press conferences, and he's really stressed being more fun, more loose on the field. And I think the players are going to respond to that well. We've seen so far this year the Falcons and Texans fire their head coach, but they've won the first game back. I think that's going to happen this week against the Bears. And I said it a little bit last week that this is probably the last game where you can probably pick the Lions to win because I feel like they're going to lose out. The Bears aren't good. We might get Swift back. I think that's also another key. I'm going to go with the Lions. It'll probably be another close game, though. But I think the players are going to respond well to Bevel, and they're going to get them a win.
And yeah, I'm going to go with the Bears. It's actually, I do agree with some things that you're saying, Roman. The problem is that Stafford's looked like a backup quarterback since Galladay's left, and he is not looking like he's going to play. If he plays, I do tend to agree. I'll be a little bit more concerned about picking the Bears. But without him in the lineup and with that awful defense, all the corners are banged up. I'm going to go with the Bears. I mean, I think their defense is good enough to bottle up Swift. And if you do that without Galladay, I don't really know. No one else scares me. So give me the Bears. I think it'll be a close game. It'll be a terrible game, but a good game at the same time. Both these teams are inept. But, yeah, it should be interesting to see what the Lions do.
Yeah, this is a game that I've lost some sleep over because I really don't know who to pick. I don't like either of these teams. I don't want to pick either of these teams. But I'm ultimately going to go with the homer side here. I'm going to go with the Lions. As Roman said, I don't know if he agreed with this, but this is purely an emotional decision. I don't see myself picking the Lions in any of the next weeks. I'd like to pick them one more time. So here we go. I'm not happy about this pick. I definitely think the Bears will win, especially if Stafford is out. But at the same time, we've seen it, like Roman said, we've seen other coaches before they get fired. There's some juice that's brought to the team. The Bears are obviously not a great football team. Definitely a winnable game, the last winnable game for the Lions here, most likely down the stretch.
I will say that if Patricia was still coaching, I would have picked the Bears. But I feel like the players are going to want to rally around Bevel. We'll see how much Patricia actually restricted this team from potentially doing stuff that made them better. I think we'll maybe see some things we haven't seen before this year coming from both sides of the ball. And like I said, new energy. I think they're going to want to get Bevel a win, who's been in this league for a very long time and is finally getting a decent opportunity to be a head coach. But we'll see if it amounts to anything.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to do our next game here. We got the Saints and the Falcons. The Falcons are just a confusing team. They're good one week. They're awful the next week. Who knows what's going to happen with them? And the Saints are really staking their claim as maybe the best team in the NFC. Of course, they had kind of an easier game last week against Denver, but nonetheless, they still look like a really good football team. So, Chris, you like the Saints or the Falcons in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Saints in this one. Not two ways about it on this. They played a couple weeks ago. It was a pretty one-sided game. Taysom Hill has looked okay as a starter. I know he hasn't thrown a ton, but he's been very good on the ground. And this defense is playing. This may be the best defense in football. They've been playing out of their minds the last 4 or 5 games. It has been difficult to score any points against them since the start of the year. They've gotten a little bit healthier in the defensive side. Michael Thomas is back as well. Even I know Kamara has been a little bit less involved, but Latavius Murray has actually really stepped up and looked impressive lately. So I'm going to take the Saints in this one. I think it could be a close game, but I'm just don't trust Atlanta, even off that 40-point blowout they had of my Raiders, I guess if you want to call it that.
Yeah, these NFC South games are usually pretty scrappy, pretty tough. Last week for the Saints, I said it would be a trap game potentially for the Broncos, but that was before I knew that they were going to put a wide receiver at quarterback. So that definitely looks bad in hindsight. I'm going to go with the Saints because, like you said, Drew or Chris, their defense is getting a lot better, and the Falcons, like they're good one week, they're bad the other. This will be their bad week.
Agree.
I also agree. The Falcons are quickly becoming my least favorite team in the NFL because I picked them 2 weeks ago because I thought they had some juice, and they lost. And then I picked against them last week because I thought they were frauds, and they won. So quickly becoming one of my least favorite teams, but I'm sure they don't care about my opinion about them. But anyway, to the Browns and the Titans, two playoff teams. In my opinion, one of the best games of the slate this week. I was high on the Browns coming in. I am a Browns fan. I love Baker Mayfield, so it's nice to see they're winning. I don't remember how many in a row they've won, but they've won several in a row. They're looking really nice in the playoff picture. But this is their really first real test since getting brutally handled by the Steelers a few weeks ago. And they face a good Titans team that's coming off a convincing statement victory last week against Indianapolis. So it should be a really good game. Roman, who do you like?
The Browns have won 3 in a row, to your point. I do think we'll see a dominant rushing attack on both sides of the ball between Henry and Chubb. Both really good running backs, probably top 5, if you want to call them that, in the league. Tennessee, obviously, I think is the more well-rounded team, and they're playing for more, I believe, because the Steelers kind of got the division wrapped up. The Tennessee Titans need to solidify their spot at the top of the division, and I think they'll do that and get a win this week.
This is the toughest game on the slate for me, man. I have been having that. Drew was talking about how he lost sleep about Detroit, Chicago, which I would never lose sleep over a Detroit game. But this is a game that I am really losing sleep over. I still don't know what I'm picking right now. I need to kind of work through it. So, I mean, both teams have a great rushing attack. There's no question about it. Derrick Henry looked great last week. Nick Chubb looks great every week because I actually do believe he may be the best pure runner in the NFL. And honestly, if Kareem Hunt wasn't there, you may be talking about the best running back in the NFL as well because I think he's a good pass catcher. He just doesn't get a lot of opportunities. Tannehill has been the better quarterback. Cleveland has the better defense, but they are also banged up. I don't know if Myles Garrett's going to play. I'm going to assume he's going to. And any game that Nick Chubb has played in, this team, I believe, has won. Maybe they're 4-1 or something like that. I think I'm gonna go with the Cleveland Browns in this one. This is a super hard game to pick, man. I'm still not sure about it. I have no confidence whatsoever. I think the Browns will probably lay an egg now that I picked them. I'm gonna lean on Nick Chubb. That's what I'm gonna do. He's one of my favorite players in the league.
I'm going with the Tennessee Titans. I think Roman was our Titans believer headed into the year. I think we all were about in the Titans because Roman was big on the Texans.
We all underestimated them.
We all were a little bit low on the Titans. But since the season started, I really like this team. And for the Browns, as much as I like them, it's one of those I'll believe it when I see it kind of things. They've reminded me in a way of the Lions a few years ago when they were 9-7 with Caldwell. As they beat up on inferior competition, got a respectable record, won the games they should have won, but then they could never beat the higher level, playoff level competition. And I think the Browns, this could be a big statement win for them if they can beat the Titans. But at the same time, I believe it when I see it. I believe it when I see it with this team. Both these teams, though, in my opinion, most likely going to go to the playoffs. And they're two nice, entertaining teams. The Titans had that nice run last year, but two teams we don't always see a ton making serious noise in the postseason. I think they will this year. So exciting for both those franchises. Definitely in a better spot than our Lions, but who cares? And then we got the Bengals and the Dolphins. This would be a really great game if Joe Burrow was playing, but of course he is not playing. The Bengals lost last week. The Dolphins basically had a bye last week against the Jets, but they came out victorious. I think it was like 20-3, a couple scores. Not a dominating win by any means, but still a win nonetheless. Chris is already putting the Dolphins in. Roman's already putting the Dolphins in. I'm about to put the Dolphins in. Does anybody have anything they want to add for this game, or are we just going to move on?
No, this is basically the same as them against the Jets last week. The Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow honestly might be worse than the Jets. I'm not kidding. I think they might be worse than the Jets because that's how good Burrow is. He actually got them a couple wins. But we can go on and jump.
Yeah. Regardless of who's quarterback between Fitzpatrick or Tua, they're going to win anyways.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah. I mean, the Bengals. I mean, they hung in there. I know it's the Giants, but the Bengals, they hung in there. They looked respectable last week. So I still think they're better than the Jets. I won't put them in that. I wouldn't be that offensive towards them. But yeah, you're right, Chris. They're not a good football team. They weren't a good football team with Burrow. They're even worse without him. So next up, I don't even know. Do we really want to talk about this game either? We got the Jaguars.
No.
Equally as bad as the Jets and the Vikings, who, as I mentioned before, peaking at the right time, I think they could sneak into the playoffs. I don't think we have anything to talk about here, but if anyone wants anything to add, feel free.
I am surprised that the Jacksonville Jaguars kept up with Cleveland last week with Mike Glennon, who I think is worse than Jake Luton, but they're going to get dominated this week by the Vikings.
Yeah, I like the Jags because they do hang in the games. They work hard. They play hard. They haven't really gotten blown out since Minshew left, but they're not a good football team. So, and I think this next game, speaking of bad football teams, we got the Jets. Even though the Raiders, which we already talked about at length in this episode, laid an egg last week against the Falcons. The Jets are even worse than the Falcons. Raiders should take care of business. If they lose this game, Derek Carr's got to get cut or something. I don't know what's going on there in Vegas if it was this game, but
I think he could play that bad again and they still win this game. So we'll see though. They may try to play even worse. We'll have to see about that. I still like Derek Carr. I still like the Raiders. I'm totally out on them just because of one absolute. I feel like this is just one you have to forget about as long as they can. Like I'm going to this game with a blank slate. I'm just forgetting about last week. But if they don't look great, they have to look great this week for me to do that.
Plus, I do think Jacob plays. It was just a sprained ankle, and I think he's on track to play. So I do think he'll play and go off. So I'm glad I have him on a fantasy team.
Yeah, for sure. If the Raiders get blown, or the Raiders aren't going to get blown out, but if they lose or if it's a close game, it's time to hit the panic button.
Yeah, I agree.
We had 3 stinkers there in a row. Now we get a kind of a decent game, but in my opinion, it might be another stinker. We got the Colts and the Texans. I know everyone's riding high on the Texans. Oh, man, they look so great on Thanksgiving Day. In my opinion, that was more the Lions looking awful than the Texans looking amazing. So I still don't like this team that much. The Colts, I already mentioned it. They had a brutal loss last week to the Titans. I think this is the definition of a get-right game. But, Roman, these are your Texans. What do you think about this game?
It was actually quite entertaining just to see the offense in full stride. I don't care if they're playing Detroit's defense. It was just nice to see all the different plays they could come up with. Even at the end, they were still running like flea flickers and pitching and all that kind of stuff. So it was just really fun to see. Obviously, though, Will Fuller is going to be a big detriment to this team from now to the end of the season. Even if that's the end of his time there, I'm going to go with the Colts because they're going to bounce back. And I think they're going to be a team that they should beat.
Yeah, I think this is a get-right game for the Colts as well. I wasn't willing to absolutely just besmirch the Houston Texans because I don't think they're quite as bad as these other teams that we've in the losing part of our pick'em so far. But I still think this is going to be a pretty one-sided game. I think this is a get-right game for the Colts.
I think it's a get-right game, but it's also a very losable game for the Colts. I also have the Colts, but similar to the Raiders, if the Colts don't look good against the Titans, I think they are – for sure, definite, legitimate frauds if they lose here against the Texans because it is a very losable game. But next, we have probably the second best game, if not maybe the best game on the slate in the Rams-Cardinals. Huge NFC playoff implications, huge NFC West divisional implications here in this one. You got the Rams who coming off a brutal loss to the Niners last week, and then the Cardinals coming off a brutal loss to the Patriots. So 2 teams in very similar spots, 2 teams that it seems like nobody really has a surefire gauge on, whether they're frauds, whether they're really good, whether they're really bad, who knows. But Chris, who is the less fraudulent of these two who emerges victorious here in Week 13?
Yeah, I got no idea, man. This is just as hard as the Cleveland-Tennessee game. I'm gonna be this is equivalent of the Lions pick for me. I'm gonna go with the Cardinals. I don't know why. I think Kyler Murray, he looked really bad last week. I think they have a better game plan for the Rams. I know the Rams defense is really good. They didn't look all that great last week against the 49ers. There was definitely exploitable moments in that game for the 49ers. They're both able to get a little bit of success through the ground and through the air. And Jared Goff looked just as bad as he always does last week with multiple winners. If Derek Carr didn't lay such a big egg, Jared Goff would be a big discussion point this week because he was the second worst quarterback in the NFL last week. He was horrible. But it could be a good right game for him. But I tend to pick against Jared Goff because I don't really like him that much. I think he's a loser. But we'll go ahead and go with the Cardinals and probably lose and fall behind Drew in the standings this week.
Well, I think this is definitely a winnable game for the Cardinals. They've lost 2 in a row, but like you said, this is definitely an opportunity to bounce back.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a game where both offenses have to keep up with each other in terms of who just score more points. And while I do kind of trust Kyler Murray over Jared Goff, I think, like I kind of said with the Titans, the Rams have the more well-rounded team. They have more higher stakes games they need to win to keep up with Seattle, who potentially might win the division. It'll be between those 2 teams, I believe. But I think the Rams are going to come out with this one.
Yeah, this is so tough. I think I've been more of a Rams guy. Obviously, I've been more of a Rams guy than a Cardinals guy pretty much all year. But man, it's tough. I just really, man, I'm gonna go with the Rams. I think. I think I'm gonna go with the Rams. I picked against I picked the Cardinals, and I wasn't rooting for them when they played the Seahawks, and then the Seahawks won. I'm just picking who the team I like more. Kind of a reverse homer pick that Chris did. I like the Rams more. I want to be rooting for the Rams. I want to pick them because it's gonna be a really, really entertaining game, really close game. But for whatever reason, the Rams just can't beat the Niners. I think they got swept last year and they got swept this year. So for whatever reason, they just don't play well against San Francisco. And I think they look so good against Tampa Bay that I'm banking on last week to be kind of an anomaly, and they're going to rebound here against Arizona because Arizona, they haven't looked good the last 3 weeks. Even against Buffalo, they didn't look good, and they lucked out a victory there. So. Chris, you seem very disappointed, but I'm sorry.
I was hoping someone would join the Cardinals bandwagon with me because I've been on an island. The three differing – you guys have yet to differ on a game, and I don't even see – maybe that'll be the entire slate, but it does feel pretty bad being on an island. But if I can win one or two of these, then I could take the week. So we'll see. I don't think we're going to defer out a lot of these coming up either. So his stomach hurts a little bit. The bowels are going to be a little bit upset going into Sunday, but hoping I can keep my lead.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll differ here on the Giants Seahawks. The Giants are peaking at the right time. I think they're leading the division at the moment in the NFC East. They're in the playoffs. I think I said this last week. I'll say it again. Who expected the Giants to be in a playoff spot entering Week 13? I can guarantee you none of us did. However, they have kind of played some inferior opponents recently, and now they're playing the Seahawks, who are a legit NFC contender. Chris already has the Seahawks in. Roman, do you agree?
Yeah, I do. Especially if they're going to go with Colt McCoy, I don't think they're going to win at all. And like you said, they have a lot of hard games coming up. Same for the whole division, really. All their schedules get tougher. So we might not see a whole lot of more wins from any of those guys, unless it's from the in-division games. But Seattle is going to win. But I still like the Giants to win the division if Jones can come back soon.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is going to be pretty one-sided game. It would be a little more interesting if Danny Dimes was in there. He has been playing a little bit better football lately, which for him is still pretty bad football, but it's not absolutely crushing them. So I will say the Giants' defense is for real. Their defense is kind of awesome. It's been at least top 12 units so far this year. I don't think they're going to be able to contain Seattle, but I'm really excited to watch that James Bradbury get hopeful shadowing of DK Metcalf. I think that'll be really fun to watch because no one's been able to hold DK, but Bradbury is easily one of the best shadow corners in the league. Whether or not he ranks high on PFF, it doesn't matter. He's a great shadow corner, a true number one corner in this league.
I am in the Washington camp. I think they're going to eventually, I feel the most confident about them in sneaking into the playoffs of any of the NFC's teams. At the same time, though, I like Daniel Jones. I like the Giants. I hope he comes back soon. I would love to see a Joe Judge-led Daniel Jones quarterback team without Saquon Barkley sneak into the playoffs because that's pretty insane. But we won't spend any more time on that game. We'll jump into another NFC East team that's trending in the wrong direction, the Philadelphia Eagles. And then they continue to look poor. Carson Wentz doesn't look great. They were in the game against the Seahawks, but I mean it was close. It wasn't a blowout.
No, you're right. I'm gonna talk about that in a second too.
They still didn't look good. And then we got the Packers, who obviously a dominant team, played an inferior Bears team, beat another inferior opponent this week. Roman's already chalked in the Packers. I'm going to do the same. Chris, do you agree with us?
Yes, I do agree with this. I actually do think this is going to be a close game because that's what I was going to say. Every game that Philly plays, they somehow salvage at the end or they keep really close throughout the game, but they find a way to lose it. That's kind of been their formula for failure this year. They haven't been getting blown out by teams. Their defense is good. Carson Wentz is horrible, but sometimes he's able to lead a nice comeback drive to cut it to a score, keep it really, maybe cut it to a field goal or something like that. But they're always a day late and a dollar short. This is going to be one of those games where they lose to the Green Bay Packers, which are the clearly better team. Aaron Rodgers is a true MVP candidate, definitely in the top three for consideration there. He's been awesome this year. And the defense, I mean, while the defense has some holes in it, it doesn't really matter. I think they will win this game by a score.
I have a hot take about this game. I think we've seen Jalen Hurts get more involved steadily as the weeks go by. They let him pass last week, which is his first pass attempt of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave Jalen Hurts a whole drive in this game because Carson Wentz has been pretty awful.
We'll see. Might happen. Definitely might happen.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because they were talking about this on the broadcast on Monday Night Football, but I agree with them. It's like, just pick a guy and go with them. Like, why are we doing this half and half, kind of Wentz, kind of Hurts? Like, if you – in my opinion, Wentz is definitely a better quarterback. I know he's looked awful this year, but he's definitely a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. But if you want to give Hurts a go, see what you got there in him, and then maybe look to move off of Wentz in the offseason, and you think Hurts gives you a better chance to sneak into the playoffs, just go all in on Hurts. Why are we doing this? He's out there for a couple plays, then he sits down, because then it messes with Wentz's confidence. It messes with Hurts' confidence. It's just pick a direction and go with it, because that's – I know Doug Peterson, he wrote an autobiography and won a Super Bowl, and everybody was bowing down to him, but now I really kind of question his coaching ability for sure. And I don't even – I know we talked about last week. I'm not going to jump into it again, but Philly Sports Talk Radio, Philly beat writers, all of them, they are calling for Peterson and Wentz's heads. So that'll be an interesting offseason storyline to follow, especially if the Eagles miss the playoffs, because I think they could have some serious turnover. And they just the Super Bowl, 2 years ago, which is – it feels like forever ago. And Wentz was a MVP candidate that year, and he could be out of town here very, very shortly. But enough Eagles talk. I know, Chris, you're your third favorite team, so hopefully things get turned around there quickly. But it doesn't look great. But anyway, we'll jump into one of my favorite teams, the New England Patriots, coming off a huge win last week, keeping their playoff hopes alive, kinda. It's that speaking of fraud teams, they're the fraud team of fraud teams. They are not as good as people tend to think they are, but they're staying alive. They're still in the picture. And you got the Chargers, who, in my opinion, did not look great last week against the Bills. Ultimately lost that game. Some poor coaching, poor time management by Anthony Lynn once again. I would be pretty shocked if he keeps his job. That could be a potential Eric Bieniemy landing spot in the offseason, because I think Lynn is going to be out of town here very shortly. But Chris, you like the Patriots or the Chargers in this one?
Well, the team I like more is the Chargers, but they just can't. They just seem – this is the Philadelphia Eagles of the AFC. This is a team that keeps the games close, but they can't ultimately win very often. So I'm going to take the Patriots. It feels gross. I'm on an island yet again. It's whatever. I mean, it's either going to – all or nothing this week. I'm going with the Patriots here, going with my gut. It's telling me to pick them.
Yeah, records aside, I think this will actually be a pretty close game. The Chargers kind of stuck with Buffalo for a little bit, made it close at the end, even though there wasn't really a chance of them coming back. I'm actually going to agree with you, Chris. I think the Patriots win this game just because of pure experience, and I don't think the Patriots lose many games to these weak opponents.
Yeah, I thought I'd be the odd one out here and pick the Patriots, but I guess not. We're all going to go Patriots here, which means the Chargers are probably going to win this game. But I'm right there with you. These are two very evenly stacked teams, and when you have even teams, it comes down to coaching. And I think without question, New England is the better coach team than the Chargers, and they'll find a way to beat this team and I guess keep their playoff hopes alive here. But who knows? Next up, we got the Broncos, who did not have a quarterback last week. So, of course, lost to New Orleans, and the Chiefs, who if you watch that game against the Buccaneers prime time or 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, you would have thought the Chiefs won like 40-20, and somehow, some way, they only won 27-24. So that's kind of concerning a little bit, but the Chiefs, I think, are still hands down the best team in the league. Broncos aren't looking great. We're already chalking it up to the Chiefs. Again, anyone got anything they want to add, or do you want to just jump into the next game?
I don't think Hill's going to go off for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns again, but I'm sure
in the first quarter.
Yeah, it'll be insane, but I think it'll be a pretty convincing game.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about Tyreek Hill as well. I'm pretty sure this is the one thing everybody, besides people are playing against Tyreek Hill in fantasy, can agree to. I have both Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Travis Kelce on my fantasy team. I didn't want either one of them to touch the ball. I wanted everything to go Tyreek Hill after the first quarter because it was just so awesome watching him dominate. And he's one of my favorite receivers. I actually do have a jersey too as well. He's actually one of my favorite players to watch. He's awesome on the field. He's great. I mean, he's He's one of the best receivers in the league. I actually believe this might be a hot take, but I think he's better than Michael Thomas as well. I mean, I know they're both really good receivers. I think Tyreek Hill in almost every single way can do what Michael Thomas does, plus also no defense can contain him, where some defenses keep Michael Thomas in front of them. He's the whole package as a receiver. And I get that Patrick Mahomes is an unbelievable quarterback, but it also doesn't hurt that he has the best tight end. And honestly, arguably, I'm not saying he is the best receiver, but he's arguably the best receiver and most impactful receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have Tyreek Hill on my fantasy team, so of course I'm biased. But at the same time, I know Mahomes gets a lot of credit for his success now. But he was doing the same thing with Alex Smith, and Alex Smith isn't a awful quarterback, but he's I would say slightly above average back then with Kansas City. And Hill was still putting up monster numbers then. So I think he has been and continues to be one of the best receivers in the league. And speaking of Alex Smith, let's jump into the next game. Washington football team and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Possibly a statement win there. I think we all went Dallas last week in our picks, and Washington is absolutely manhandled the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. It was a pretty crappy slate of games on Thanksgiving, especially with Pittsburgh and Baltimore getting rescheduled. But Washington really in my opinion, staked their claim as the best team in the NFC East, which really isn't saying much. But they get the lone undefeated team in the Pittsburgh Steelers here. We, of course, don't know the results of the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game if it even happened, but I'm assuming they're going to stay undefeated, at least in my opinion. And I think Washington could easily win this game. But Chris, you already got the Steelers there. I think you want to talk about frauds. I think the Steelers might be frauds. I think they might be frauds. You look at their games; it's close almost every time. And I know they're undefeated. They're a really good football team, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're like the Ravens, who then blow up and lose in the playoffs in the first round, like last year. So that's all I got to say. That's my take.
Okay. Well, I mean, that might be possible, but they're not losing to Washington. They're not going to I don't think this game is going to be that particularly close. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I mean, I like Washington. I actually do. I was saying before the podcast, another thing we were discussing before the podcast, I do like what Washington is doing. I think they're building for the future. I think Terry McLaurin is an absolutely elite receiver. I think Antonio Gibson honestly might be the best rookie running back in this entire draft class. I think I loved him coming in. I think he's an awesome dynamic player. I'm glad they shipped everybody else out because he is a lead back. He can be a top 5 running back in this league in the future potentially if he keeps it up. Because I think he's that talented. But they also have a great defense as well. They just need the quarterback and offensive line as well. But I do like what they're doing. I don't like what they're going to be doing this week because they're going to get probably dominated by the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I expect the Steelers to come into this game undefeated. I think they still beat Baltimore, as we all picked them to win that game as well. But I am very intrigued in this game. I think, we already knew this, but Washington's defense is legit, and they proved it on Thanksgiving, even though it was the Cowboys. I think they're very much legit. I think when you give them a fighting chance, they'll prove to you that they're actually a contender in the division, as we've seen this year. And I think that will continue next year as well if they have the right quarterback. But my only problem in this game is Washington's offense. I don't think they can overcome the Pittsburgh's dominant defense. And I think Pittsburgh's going to win this game. I do think it'll be close, though, and I'm very excited for this one.
Yeah, I think Chris, to an extent, you're not giving Washington enough credit here. I think Pittsburgh's going to win, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a 7 to 10 point game. Wouldn't surprise me if things are really close and Washington has a chance to win it entering the fourth quarter. We just saw it a few weeks ago. Pittsburgh almost probably should have lost to Dallas and Garrett Gilbert, and we just saw Washington absolutely demolish them. So they're peaking at the right time. I don't think any of the NFC East teams win this week, but if I feel most confident about one of them maybe pulling off a massive upset, it's definitely Washington. But I still think Pittsburgh emerges victorious because they are definitely the superior team. But now we got the Bills and the Niners, two teams coming off big wins last week. The Niners, based on what I've seen in the national media, they're gaining more steam as the team to maybe sneak into the playoffs than the Vikings. I still don't buy their offense, even though I know Deebo Samuel had a nice game last week. And the Bills are really staking their claim. They're definitely better than the Dolphins. They're going to win the AFC East, in my opinion. And there may be I know I was trashing Chris because you said they might be a dark horse Super Bowl contender, but I'm starting to kind of buy in a little bit more the more I see of them. But Roman, who do you like in this one?
I do think this is going to be a really good game. Buffalo lost a couple weeks ago in Arizona. They'll be traveling back there again. Doesn't make a difference. I just wanted to point that out. But I haven't taken a shot in the dark today. I can afford to make this pick. I'm gonna go with San Francisco to be different. I think this game is important. I think the rest of the games are important for San Francisco, especially for Robert Saleh as he kind of builds his resume a little bit going into the offseason, because I definitely think he'll get hired as a head coach somewhere. Hopefully it's Detroit. We'll see. But I think this is one of those games where if Saleh can get his defense together, they have Sherman back, so that definitely helps. But if they can beat Buffalo in their offense, I think that's a definite key game to him. Plus, their offense has been gradually getting better. I'm still not buying into Garoppolo a little bit, but this will be a good game. I think San Francisco comes out with it.
Well, you don't have to worry about buying into Garoppolo because Nick Mullins will be the starting quarterback again this week. You said this is a shot in the dark, but I'm having a hard time not picking the San Francisco 49ers in this game. I know I've been a backer of the Buffalo Bills, but there is a key problem with the Buffalo Bills right now, and it is the fact that John Brown is on IR. Josh Allen has been horrible without him, and I'm going to take San Francisco 49ers in this one as well. I am worried about, with John Brown on IR for the next 3 weeks with the ankle injury, Allen has been bad. He's been straight up bad. He hasn't been good at all, and I don't think this defense is that great either. I'm worried about. I think the Niners looked really good last week. I know it was the Rams. They've had success against the Rams for the last couple of years, as Drew mentioned previously. But I think I'm going to go with the Niners in this one. They need this game really bad. I think they can grind out a victory. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm excited to watch this one. Probably going to be wrong. I'm sure Buffalo will come out and blow them out, but I'm going with the Niners.
Man, I just must not be seeing what everybody else is seeing with the Niners. I know I was the first to hop off their bandwagon when they first had their first roll of injuries early in the season. But for me, I mean, I think Buffalo easily wins this game. I mean, I'm like Nick. I know you said Buffalo doesn't have a great defense, but Nick Mullins is the quarterback. I know he showed flashes of being decent, but this is a guy who couldn't beat the Eagles a few weeks ago. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't believe in him. I know their defense is well coached, great unit. It's going to be a close game, no doubt about it. But I think if Josh Allen is the MVP we all think he is, he should be able to win this game against an inferior Niners team. If Josh Allen's the MVP we think he is, if the Bills are the team we think they are, that they can go deep in the playoffs, they got to win this game against an inferior Niners team with or without John Brown. You still got Stephon Diggs. I think they got to win this game, and I think that they are going to win this game because, in my opinion, they're just a better team than the Niners, plain and simple.
And I want to add to something. While I do agree, I think the Bills are the better team of these two. I'm really worried about when John Brown's out there. It has been Josh Allen's struggle show every week. If you look at the box score, his passing numbers are down almost 100 yards in games that John Brown isn't playing. They can't run the football whatsoever. The Niners have Sherman back who can cover. I mean, they play a lot of zone, but he can cover. He can stick around Diggs. I mean, Diggs kind of got shut down last week. They didn't really have anybody else to go through. I really think they should have lost last week. They didn't play that good. But also the Niners have Mostert and Deebo Samuel back. And I think that's a big deal as well. That's why I think the difference comes in this game. Like I said, I think it's going to be within a field goal. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm really excited to watch it. But I'm going to take the Niners in the upset. I don't want to be in the wrong side of history on this one.
I don't know if there's much history being made in this game, but I'll add a little bit here and just say that I do think Buffalo is also the better team going into this game, but San Francisco, I think, is just going to appear to play spoiler. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think if they can knock Buffalo from maybe getting a better seed in the AFC picture, I think that's beneficial to them. They're hitting their stride a little bit, and I made a mistake. I said Garoppolo. You're right, Chris. Mullins is going to be playing in this game, but I think he's actually been pretty decent. He definitely can have his bad games, but I think in this game he has most of his weapons back. Mostert, I think, is also good to have back. He had a touchdown last week. He'll probably get in the end zone again this week. I think they're going to win, barely.
It's a close game for sure, but I don't know. The Bills are. I thought this was just going to be another chalk pick, so I'm genuinely shocked. But again, you guys aren't alone. I am definitely in the minority. If you look at the national media, everyone's buying all the Niners stock at the moment and thinking they're going to make the playoffs. So maybe I'm just missing something, but I think the Bills are going to win this game. But it's going to be close. The Niners are a well-coached team, play tough. They're going to stay with it. But there's definitely not going to be as much controversy, at least I don't think, in this Cowboys-Ravens matchup. Chris has already got the Ravens in. I think regardless of who is active for the Ravens, because they obviously still are undergoing some COVID issues, I think they are still going to be a superior team than the Cowboys, who, as already mentioned, looked awful against Washington after looking pretty good 2 weeks ago. So, Chris, you already put the Ravens in. Roman, do you agree?
Yeah, I expect Lamar Jackson to play, but they can pretty much rock up with Trace McSorley and still beat them by 20. So I think Baltimore is going to win this game pretty convincingly.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter who's there for Baltimore. I think the Cowboys losing both Zach Martin, Cam Irving is pretty much all that I need to see to just easily pick the Baltimore Ravens in this one. I think they will win by 10 or more. I think Lamar has a good game as well. I think he has a somewhat get-right game.
I'm not going to say this game isn't any doubt, but if they lose to the Steelers tonight, that'll just give them more incentive to come out and perform better. So I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, the Cowboys, I was kind of starting to buy them a little bit, maybe when they beat the Vikings a couple weeks ago, but getting absolutely demolished by the Washington on Thanksgiving Day erased any Andy Dalton Cowboy stock I still had. So I think the Ravens, this is a really good get right game for them, regardless of what happens here tonight against Pittsburgh, hopefully. But I think that's it for the pick'em. So we'll jump into fantasy picks of the week. I think it's only right for Chris, because you had such a rough week last week, that you start us off here with the fantasy picks of the week.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to talk about Derek Carr anymore, and I'm not saying this to make up for my pick, but David Montgomery, I will give myself some credit for that pick. He did have an excellent week. It was his best week of the season, which it really sucks that I picked Derek Carr, because I'd be drinking David Montgomery's bathwater right now. You know, I mean, it's a great feeling picking him, having him score a touchdown, bust off that long run early in the game. He had a really nice game for both PPR and standard. But it doesn't matter because I picked Derek Carr. But we're going to try to bounce back this week. I'm not picking a quarterback. That has just gone horribly wrong for anybody that's done it. I mean, it's been a problem all year for us picking quarterbacks. We need to stop doing it. If anyone today,
I remember we put Gardner Minshew. It didn't work.
Yeah, I remember that was almost as bad as Derek Carr. He was really bad in that game as well. It's been a problem all year, man. I'm not picking quarterback for the rest of the season, but I will pick Baltimore running back J.K. Dobbins in this one. I think as long as he comes off the list, which I expect him to, I mean, he's already kind of off of it. He almost played this week. I expect Dobbins to have the lead time share in this backfield. He's not going to have all the work, but I think he's going to get a majority of it. Dallas is very good against the run. I mean, I think they're 17th against fantasy points allowed against the run. I think Dobbins has a breakout game. I think this is a game he goes over 100. He gets a touchdown. He's a guy that you could play in your RB2 spot. I'm debating playing him in my league as well. He's on the bench right now, but he might find his way into my starting lineup over a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Because I want to take that shot on the upside this week, I'm calling for it. I think this is a good game for J.K. Dobbins and a guy you can absolutely play.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. He's definitely having the momentum in this backfield. Like you said, it's all contingent on whether he plays or not, but I definitely think he will. And in terms of the whole outlook on the next couple of years for that backfield, Ingram has an out in his contract in 2021. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dobbins finishes the year strong and they move on from Ingram completely. Because I think Dobbins is the future in that backfield, and I think he'll have a good game to probably solidify his stock in that organization.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of the year when we were doing fantasy drafts, Dobbins was like, hey, this guy, he might not be great when you first draft him for the first start of the year, but then he's really going to come on down the stretch and into the playoffs. And it seemed like as soon as the season started, we all forgot about that because he got to a slow start, as we expected, and then he got cut. Nobody wanted him anymore. But exactly what we expected to happen is happening. He's getting more touches, becoming a really focal point of that offense. And I'm right there with you, Chris. I think it's a great pick. We just saw what Antonio Gibson did to the Cowboys on Thursday. And I think if Dobbins gets just as many touches, he could have just as good of a game. Maybe not 36 points good like Antonio Gibson did, but still a real solid week.
20-25 points.
For sure, yeah, for sure. And you can probably play him as your RB2 or your flex play, and he could still have a monster week as everyone's trying to get to the playoffs here right now.
I will also add, you kind of mentioned the mock drafts, and I want to go back to our mock draft that we did. It was the second one. I drafted J.K. Dobbins before Mark Ingram, and you guys kind of clowned me for it. But in hindsight, it wasn't that bad, I guess you could say.
No, it was a really good pick.
But I also I also drafted him in my real league and cut him after the first couple weeks, but that's also on me as well. So you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some. But Roman, how about you take us through your first fantasy pick?
Yeah, just to touch on last week as well. This is like the third time it's happened to me. I got another void. I picked I picked Jonathan Taylor. That did not happen. He didn't play. Wayne Gallman though had a good game. Giovanni Bernard did not. So I'll chalk it up as a 50-50 for that week. I'm gonna go with the wide receiver. Terrible game on Monday night. I'm gonna go with Tyler Lockett. There's many points to be had in this game against the Giants. I think anyone on that team is worth starting, I believe. And especially coming off a terrible week, he's going to bounce back. Who knows how Bradbury shadows Metcalf? You seem to like that matchup, Chris. So that could leave opportunity for Lockett in the open field. And he had some targets, but it just wasn't hauling him in, or it was just like not on target. So I think Russell Wilson plays better because he also had a terrible game as well, not the best. So he has a better game, and so does Lockett.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing with Lockett. I think you got to play him. I mean, it's on paper tough matchup because the Giants are a good defense in general. But like I said earlier, James Bradbury should theoretically be on DK Metcalf. So I think Lockett will have the second corner, which I don't really think is a scary matchup for him.
Logan Ryan, right?
Yeah, I'm not really worried about Logan Ryan. He's like 35 years old. I mean, he's a decent corner. I mean, he was the Lions' #1 corner, but that's not saying much. So Lockett, gotta play him every week. I think he's a wide receiver too. There's a chance he gets you 1 point this week. I mean, that's always a chance with Lockett. He's been doing it, but I feel like the second you take him out of your lineup, we were talking about this before the show. The second you take him out of the lineup, he's gonna get 35 points. So I think you got to leave him in for this matchup as a wide receiver too, and hope this is the week. It's gonna happen at some point. It's like the Mandalorian. This is the way. This is the week. I think it's gonna happen at some point where he actually has a big game. So let's see if it does.
I love the reference, but yeah, it's got to be this week. Doesn't have to be this week, but if you're a team like Roman, who's trying to sneak into the playoffs, you really need this to be Lockett's week. So
yeah,
hopefully it is. He obviously was a beast to start the year, and he's cooled off a little bit down the stretch. But I'll jump into my pick, also a receiver, and I'm going with Justin Jefferson, going against the Jaguars. He just to kind of put the knife into Eagles fans a little bit more here. They could have had him and said they drafted Jalen Reagor, who so far has dealt with injuries, hasn't looked great, and Justin Jefferson looks like a legitimate star. In terms of fantasy, he's definitely been huge boomer bust guy. He'll get you like 25 to 40 points in 1 week, and then he'll get you like 5 or 6 another week. So huge boomer bust. But I think he had a monster week last week. He's another monster week this week, especially if Thielen still is unable to play. It seems like he's probably going to be able to play. But if he's not able to play, Jefferson will have a even huger week. I don't even know if that's a word, but he's going to have a huge week again. And because Kirk Cousins has been looking good here these last few weeks, Jacksonville's not a great team. Everything's pointing in the right direction for Jefferson to have another monster week this week.
Yeah, I like the matchup a lot against Jacksonville. He may see some C.J. Henderson, which is going to be a fun rookie matchup. They may be on each other, I guess, as you'd say. But there's a couple of factors. I almost had Justin Jefferson as well. I really considered him. If you guys would have taken like all my picks, I probably would have actually picked him because he wasn't on my like backups, but I definitely was considering him this week. But I like him a lot because Dalvin Cook is banged up as well. I think that's going to be big. I think they may limit his work. It's a game they should theoretically win easily on paper. I don't think they have to give Dalvin Cook 35 carries to win this game. I feel like it can be more in the ballpark of 15 to 20. I think Jefferson finds his way into the end zone this week with a nice game as well. A guy that you can absolutely start as a wide receiver too. I think even though Thielen is having a fantastic season, I think Justin Jefferson is, whether I'm right or wrong, I think he is the wide receiver 1 on this team. I think he's actually maybe better than Adam Thielen already, which is also a hot take, but I just love Justin Jefferson that much. And yeah, Philly, you should be absolutely bummed at your franchise. I know Carson Wentz sucks. I know Doug Peterson, you may want his head. Maybe you should be looking at the GM as well, because passing on Justin Jefferson, as much as I do like Jalen Reagor as well, I think he'd still be good. Jefferson is looking like a generational talent and maybe the best wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you're not too far off by saying he's almost better than Thielen. But yes, he was also on my radar for picking him this week. It's been kind of a pattern in that Minnesota offense. Thielen got 2 touchdowns against Chicago and Dallas, and then Jefferson got 2 touchdowns last week against Carolina. So he definitely is able to get that again. It's a continuous pattern, I believe, and if it's not Cook, it's going to be either Jefferson or Thielen. So I think you hit the nail on the head with that pick.
He's even, in my opinion, he's even been a better real life wide receiver than a fantasy wide receiver too.
Yeah,
If you watch him during the games, he's looked even better. He's still been a pretty good fantasy option as well.
I mean, every grab this guy gets is a 20-yard reception. I feel like the dude's averaging over 20 yards of reception this year. I feel like literally every ball he brings down, he's making a guy miss, or it's already down the field for like a long way. Which I mean, every time a ball's thrown down the field, it's usually a tough grab. So this guy, I mean, people were criticizing him. This is more of a real life, not fantasy talk, but people were criticizing him for being more of a slot receiver in college. He is absolutely not that. He is a receiver that can win on the inside, on the outside. He's very versatile. He can run a full route tree. He can make the contested catch, make people miss. I love Justin Jefferson. I'm starting to develop a man crush on this dude because I think he is a true number one receiver and an absolute stud of a receiver.
That's a little too much information there, Chris, but I agree. And this is a loaded wide receiver rookie class. You got T. Higgins, C.D. Lamb, who both look really good. Jerry Jeudy's shown flashes, and there's a lot of like Jalen Reagor guys that could develop maybe in year 2 or year 3. Ayuk, but Jefferson might be the best guy. Quintez Cephas, not Quintez Cephas, but Jefferson might be the guy to be the best of all of them. So. I'll jump into my next pick, though. It's another receiver. This is the guy that in our preseason fantasy predictions, mock drafts, this is the guy that I jumped on the table and said, this is my guy. I really was a stand for this man. Chris, you mentioned having a man crush for Justin Jefferson. This is a guy that I kind of had a man crush on. He dealt with injuries. He was still a solid receiver, not as good as I thought he was going to be, but he had a monster week last week, expecting him to carry on again here against the Bengals. And of course, I'm going with Devontae Parker of the Miami Dolphins. I think he's one of my favorite players in the league, one of my favorite fantasy players at least. I was huge on him entering the season. For the most part, he's not lived up to those lofty expectations I had, but he had a nice week last week, and he's having another nice week this week. I think he's a solid option here, and he could probably slot him in there as a wide receiver 2 or a flex option. I think he can get you high-end wide receiver 2, maybe even low-end wide receiver 1 production.
Yeah, I mean, especially if Tua misses and Fitzmagic is the quarterback. This is I mean, he's got top 10 upside with Fitzmagic on a weekly basis. I mean, he was very solid at the start of the year, getting over 100 yards, getting a couple touchdowns, despite being banged up. He's fully healthy now. Tua's out, which for now, I don't think long-term will help him. I think those two will develop a nice connection over the next couple of years, as long as Parker sticks around for the long haul, which he is under contract right now. So I expect him to be there while Tua develops. But for now, Fitzmagic is the better fantasy option to support Devontae Parker. I think he gets in the end zone this week. Cincinnati's defense, not great. Parker thrives in these matchups as well. I like him this week a lot as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of points to be had from that Miami offense, especially against a weak team against the Bengals. It could be a blowout, but we'll know. Who knows? But I think Parker is definitely going to be a priority in that offense, whether it's Tua or Fitzpatrick.
Absolutely. He's my pick, so I don't have much to add. So, Chris, how about you, or Roman, how would you jump into your second fantasy pick?
Yeah, just a little honorable mention. I kind of want to mention Brandon Cooks because obviously he'll probably be the wide receiver 1 in that offense now that Fuller is gone for the year, being suspended, obviously. But it's a tough matchup against the Colts, so whether he's shadowed by Xavier Rhodes or not, I'm not sure. He could be a good play. I'm not going to make him my start of the week, though, but it's definitely something to note. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't put a whole lot of research into my picks this week. I'm not picking a quarterback because we definitely don't know how that goes. But I'm gonna go off the board. I think this is the first time we've picked a defense in this segment. This defense is not particularly being good. It's definitely underwhelming for many people this year. But they had a great matchup, obviously. I have to mention it. Seattle defense against the Giants, Colt McCoy. At home, though, this is going to be a home matchup versus the Giants. I think this defense has the potential to maybe, rough them up a little bit, get inside, win the game, particularly on defense. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a pick 6. When you look at defenses in fantasy, you don't really consider it a start of the week unless they have like a return touchdown or a pick 6 or a couple fumble recoveries. But I think that's what's going to happen this week against the Giants. Although I do like them, but when Colt McCoy gets on the field, who knows what's going to happen. So I think Seattle has the opportunity to feast and probably win the game more on defense than they might on offense.
Yeah, I like this a lot. I know Seattle's defense hasn't been great, but they've been a little bit better as of late. Carlos Dunlap helps them out as well. I still think they're a bottom 10 defense, but this is a top 5 matchup, especially with Colt McCoy. I'm very willing to start them. I'm not willing to make them my start of the week because defense. It's kind of unpredictable for me. I'm not willing to go that far, but I do like them, so I'm fine with the pick as well. I think they can be a pretty good defense, at least a top 10 option this week for me within my top 10.
I'm still a little concerned about Seattle's defense. Well, I'm not as high on it as you guys seem to be, but I think it's still a nice pick. If you're a team that likes to stream defenses, this is probably the best ad of the week for sure. Again, I put defense is in the same category as tight ends or kickers, where it's just you just kind of close your eyes and pick one and see what happens, roll the dice. But yeah, I mean, if you're a team that's looking to stream an option, I think Seattle is a great waiver ad for this week for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll jump into my pick. I'll close it out. And what better way to close it out with a very Roman-like pick here?
Adrian Peterson?
Deshaun Watson.
Basically the equivalent of Adrian Peterson for a different team. It's old man Frank Gore, baby.
Oh no.
Frank Gore against the Las Vegas Raiders, the 29th ranked against the running backs. He's been over double digits back-to-back weeks. He's getting a ton of work right now. I'm not calling for him to be a top 5 running back. I'm not calling for him to be even a top 20 running back. I think this is a guy you can play in a desperation. I know not everybody is in a situation at running back. I know guys like Roman are. I have pretty good running backs. I wouldn't need to play him in my league, but there is a league that I am very desperate for a running back too this week, and I'm going to pick up and start Frank Gore with confidence that he's going to get me 10 points. I think he might find his way in the end zone in this game as well. I know it's probably not going to be a very good game, but there's a chance the Jets can compete, and I think he's getting everything. And P. Ryan's still out. He's not going to be playing this week either because he got the high ankle sprain. He's the only show in town. It's super gross. It's basically the equivalent of the Adrian Peterson pick. It's really not that much different, but I'm going with Frank Gore.
I commend you for picking a Jets player, but I hope you know what you're getting yourself into.
I know.
I think you have to preface that by saying in 12-team leagues and 14-team leagues, he's a fine play, and I can agree with you there. But like you said, on our teams, he wouldn't be even close to the starting lineup. So in that regard, I think you have to worry about that a little bit. But definitely, if you're in need of a running back, you want to get any production as possible from the Jets, at least. It should be Gore, but you never know.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. He doesn't have the upside. There's no change. He's a floor play. He can get you 10 points.
I think I would rather start Adrian Peterson than Frank Gore this week, to be honest.
I would not, but I duly noted. I think this is a revenge game now for Frank Gore because he's going to be wanting to prove Roman wrong. I think he's going to. He's going to give me 3 touchdowns, 350 yards. Now, in all seriousness, it's a desperation play. Like I said, I mean, you could have what if you have James Conner and a guy like Josh Jacobs? Maybe he doesn't play this week. You may need in a very desperation play, even in a 10-team league. It's very possible. I think a guy in our league actually will have to play him this week, depending on his the health of the rest of his team. But you may need a flex option. I think he can be that plug and play 10-point guy. Ugly, don't watch it, plug your nose, sit on the toilet while the game's going on, whatever you got to do. But I think he can get you 10 points.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a risky play, but I like your reasoning behind it. If your back's against the wall, you need a running back. He's sitting there on the waivers. He's sitting at the end of your bench. You can throw him in there, and he definitely has the potential. Because as you said, he's a volume. He's maybe a lesser version of David Montgomery, a volume-dependent fantasy back. If I'm picking a Jets player, I have to pick a Jets player to throw my roster. I know he's not a running back, but I'd probably throw Denzel Mims. He's looked really good these last few weeks as a fantasy option in real life. But in terms of running back, Frank Gore, yeah, I think he's a solid option. I guess, but it's definitely a risky play. I'm not in love with the pick. But
that's fair. We'll have to see. I think he can get you 10 points if you need it.
I think an end zone would make his day. I think that's a fact.
Yes.
So it could definitely happen, but am I going to predict it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a ballsy pick by Chris. I got to respect that. But
he didn't go chalk after that Carr pick. That's for sure.
Yeah, Carr wasn't really. I wouldn't say chalk. He's a streaming option. I actually thought about going back with him this week. Absolutely insane.
I mean,
and
it makes sense, but we can't touch it.
Yeah, it defies all logic. I'm not playing him. No chance. I would never play him after that matchup. He was so horrible. I just want him off the rosters just with the stench of that game. But then you can drop him and pick up the stench of Frank Gore. So, I mean, it really, what is that? I don't know. That's interesting, though. We'll have to see if it works. Probably won't. Him and Dobbins both very risky. I'll probably be apologizing for another pick this week.
All right, I think we spent 5 minutes too long talking about Frank Gore and his matchup against the Raiders. But unless anyone else anything else to add for this week, Roman.
Yes. I think this is gonna be another week that's gonna change up the picks quite a bit in terms of the standings. I don't think we mentioned it, but Drew, you actually won last week by 1 pick up against us. So that's definitely a good redemption week for you. But this week, this could be serious in terms of rankings, and I think we're going to see some changes next week.
Yeah, it'll be either Chris. I mean, in terms of you and I, we only differed on the Buffalo pick, so it won't be a whole lot changing there. But in terms of Chris and me, and Chris and you, he could either be a insurmountable, his favorite word. Chris might have an insurmountable lead on the rest of us. Or I could be in first, or I could be a game behind, and you're right there too. So interesting to see there what'll happen for sure. But Chris, unless you have anything else to add, I think we're gonna wrap this episode up. So again, we're the Zone Defense Podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify and Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and you can also search us on Apple Podcasts. Be sure to smash that like button. And as I always say, make sure you leave a comment down below. We love reading the comments, responding to the comments. If you are just as big of a diehard Frank Gore fan like Chris is, be sure to let us know about that. If you're as hype about me as I am about the Darrell Bevel coaching legend, whatever, the beginning of his legendary coaching career with the Lions, and he's going to lead us to 9-7, the playoffs, into the Super Bowl. If you agree with that, drop a comment down below. Roman, I don't think you said anything outlandish this episode, so I won't trash you on anything like that.
I guess not.
Be sure to drop a comment down below. But that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
See ya.